Wow, I just read the newest Diablo 4 patch notes and I could barely believe what I was reading. Patch 111 is bringing some changes to Diablo 4 that will dramatically change the game. Things that honestly, like I said previously, I can't even believe are in the game. We learned that barrier interactions are going to be adjusted in patch 111. On-hit effects will now apply through barriers. So previously, you wouldn't be able to apply vulnerable, for example, to an enemy that has a barrier, which is odd, right? It should be applied, but the barrier was preventing that from happening, so that sounds like a bug, right? Now, of course, vulnerable is just one example. All bonus effects that are applied on hit were not being applied properly, which is slated to be fixed in patch 111. Now, one insane fix coming in patch 111 is the fix to Caged Heart of the Barber. This heart was stealing other players' damage, which looked really weird when fighting world bosses. You just see their health go down in chunks rather than gradually, because Caged Heart of the Barber says critical strikes and all subsequent damage within 2 to 4 seconds is absorbed by your target. Then the absorbed damage erupts onto surrounding enemies. Stored damage is increased by 10% per second. So you'd see not only the player who has the Caged Heart of the Barber absorbing damage, but also everyone else's damage was getting absorbed too. And then it would all get stored and erupt as a single damaging source. And so you'd kind of just see the boss just every few seconds, 2 to 4 seconds to be exact, just lose a big chunk of its health because all of that damage was being absorbed and then amplified by Caged Heart of the Barber. Patch 111 aims to fix that, making so that it will only impact damage that the user of the Heart of the Barber and no longer account for nearby players. Now this will definitely have a major impact on the heart, making it of course much less powerful, dealing much less damage, because it isn't increasing everyone's damage by 10% each second against world bosses, for example. But this seems like a change that is in the right direction, because clearly this is some sort of exploit to get more damage than should through a bug. Now, a lot of things like that in Diablo 4 have been appearing, and whenever it's nerfed, players seem to get upset. This particular change, though, I think might make players happy, I would say, because, I mean, who wants to see their damage just clumped together like that, or even stolen by other players? Now, speaking of changes that are going in the right direction, there is something that I was really happy to see, and that was the removal of the Empowered Elite's Cold Enchanted Nightmare Sigil affix, along with the Resource Burn and Backstabber affix. Now, we know that this list isn't exhaustive, but I'm pretty happy with the removal of these affixes. I'm hoping they remove the Thunderstorm affix because I think that one is one of the worst. But I think this is a start. I think I would also have liked to see diminishing returns implemented alternatively. So as you know, champion monsters and elites can only be crowd controlled a number of times before they become immune to crowd control. Well, I'd like to see that same treatment get applied to players. Diablo 4 crowd control is really unforgiving, and as someone who preferred to play with 3 unstoppable mechanics as a druid, it was because crowd control isn't fun. I mean, who wants to be chain stun locked to the point they can't even control their character? So I think this change to remove the Cold Enchanted Empowered Elite Sigil is a good move, even if a small one in the right direction. On the opposite side of the spectrum, I was looking at the proposed changes to Druid and could not help but laugh a bit. The Fireside chat showed that Druid basic skills would generate 1 more resource. And it was really just more of the same, if you ask me. Just nothing that would really move the needle. The passive damage increase for minions, I really think are going to be inconsequential too, because really the power of minions came from their activated ability, and those passive attacks hit for seriously like no damage. Another problem with minions is that the AI is really bad, just straight up. Even if they buffed the passive damage of wolves, they still wander about and don't attack things right away. You could literally walk right next to a monster and it would take your wolf a few seconds to actually attack it. I think fixing the AI of summons would be much stronger of a buff than this small percent increase. But of course, it's much harder for the developers to actually make the AI lock on to monsters and attack them much more quickly. Now, another noteworthy change in the 111 patch notes was the change to enchanting. Rerolling stats could cause 2 of the same affix to appear, which feels like a ripoff if you're not the affix you're looking for, much like Diablo 4 in general. This was mentioned in the patch notes as a bug that is being fixed in the patch 111 notes. Of course, when you make that enchantment, your costs are going to go up. It really just feels terrible to get double of what you're not looking for. So that's going to change in 111. But one of the most important things of all of the patch notes that I read through that I feel is most consequential is the fix to monster density. Like we had discussed in the last Diablo 4 video, the time spent in nightmare dungeons was primarily just walking around. Well, patch 111 is increasing monster density in both Hell Tides and Nightmare Dungeons. I think this is a much needed change. Monster density was just too low, and too much of the time was spent just walking around wondering, where are all the monsters? This is actually kind of crazy, right? I think the number was like 60-40 or something like that. 60% of the time you're actually just running through Nightmare Dungeons. I'm rounding up. It might have been 57% or something like that. So I think this is a great change. We're going to have to see, and honestly, I think they could really crank it up even more than what they've done here. But changing gears, one thing I am curious to test out actually is the change to temerity. This unique actually looks fun to me. If you gain health when you're at 100%, you gain that health as a barrier based off of your max life, which I think could be fun. I think this unique was close to being something I included in my build, but with the change of all stats replaced with max life, barrier is now being based off max life as well. This could potentially be more powerful than a defensive aspect, especially after the nerf to aspect of disobedience. So perhaps this is actually something that'll make its way into builds, and the developers were all scared to make this change, but I think ultimately this change will probably make this unique more powerful. You know, one thing about Diablo in general is feeling that amazing feeling when you see an item drop that you know is super powerful or is even your best in slot. And I felt like a lot of the time I didn't feel that feeling in Diablo 4. The only time I ever felt that was when Vasili's Prayer dropped, Tempest Roar, Insatiable Fury, Mad Wolf's Glee. So, you know, not actually too bad. But I think for a lot of other classes, they might not have items like that. And I think the one thing that kind of bothered me a little bit too was actually the scaling of the uniques. So I'd find future versions of this again that are just like 2% better or like 4% better. I think it might be an underlying issue where that happens. Like I'd prefer just to have the best in slot item and not replace it for a 4% better temerity, for example, or a 4% better Vasili's Prayer. Something they're going to have to iron out, I feel like. I know a lot of players don't like finding loot that's like 4% better and just upgrading it over and over like that. It kind of makes it not as fun. It's kind of nice to just get that amazing unique that just changes the way you play completely, and that's just a really fun feeling. And I remember it very well when I first got Vasili's Prayer, how much fun that was. And so I'm going to say that was actually pretty awesome. And it'd be cool if temerity was like that. Like you buff it, make it change the way you play your character. I think uniques should be like that. Diablo, I think, needs more items that are that powerful. But overall, looking through the class changes, I'm not really seeing anything that's game changing. I would say it looks like Chain Lightning is buffed for the Sorcerer and Lightning in general with a number of other lightning skill improvements, but I'm not sure if all the class balance changes are enough to make up for the massive power loss with the previous patch that severely cut everyone's character down a size. Let me know in the comments, guys. Are you still playing Diablo 4? Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care.